We were looking for ideas for videos. This one has come suggested by David Starr. Thank you very much, David, who said, have you seen the article about the Opta stats? I hadn't seen the article about the Opta stats. Gio actually, bless him. Just David, thank you for the suggestion. He didn't post a link. Gio went and found it. Gio posted me a link. He said, have a look at this. I have had a look at this. It's a shame this video isn't going out on Halloween, because we'd give it the full sort of horror story and Hammer horror stats and probably ghouls and monsters and all the rest of it. Does not make for good reading, Gio. I've got some bullet points here. What were your initial thoughts?
Probably as expected, to be honest with you. I think there was probably a few more positives than I expected, but in terms of the negativity around it, I mean, it sort of backs up what we've been seeing this season. I think there was no surprises. I didn't read that and go, "Oh," there was no shock or nothing like that. But it was quite damning, and it was a bit depressing, actually, to be honest with you. It was just a reminder of how poor we've been this season from a statistical standpoint. And I know people might not necessarily like stats, but I do think there's something in them a lot of the time, and it's about how you interpret them. You know, statistically, 99% of people click the thumbs up on this video, but there will be 1% that don't like it. But yeah, it was a good article, though. I quite enjoy reading things like this because it's from a completely different perspective. It's from a neutral. It's not a West Ham fan, and they're looking at numbers, they're looking at figures and algorithms. They're staying away from whether they think a certain player is a good player. They don't take that into consideration. They just look at it from a number standpoint and present their evidence.
Absolutely. An Opta are the industry standard. It's worth pointing out that it's not actually easy to get hold of their stats. We've tried to do it on a number of occasions,
You need a few grand.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're not able to use their stats. So when they release a publication and when they release their stats, you've got to listen. You know, they really do analyze the game better than anybody else. They're the industry standards. I'm going to read out a few stats, but not all of them all at once, because I'm not mad on stats, but sometimes they're so overwhelming you can't sort of argue with them. But I think before we do that, it's worth sort of setting the scene, which is, you know, what's happened in the last 2 seasons that's preceded this, which is we finished 6th and we finished 7th, a European campaign. And then David Moyes gets to a point where he gets a big transfer kitty, and it's only less than Chelsea and Manchester United in world football. That's significant. We've never seen spending like this at West Ham before, where we were up with the big guys. You know, this just hasn't happened, right? The idea was that he was going to, and I paraphrase him here, he was going to change the way we play a little bit more. The feeling was that teams were sitting back against us. He was going to make us more expansive, a bit more of a possession-based game, attack a bit more, that sort of thing. Okay, so with that in mind, and with that as the canvas, then we put the painting on top of it. Possession in last season was 47.9%. It's gone down to 43.5%. It's a big drop. So we're actually having less possession, not more. There's a really interesting stat I found. I didn't know this stat. And this is basically what's called a pass sequence. And a pass sequence is what it was basically. So sometimes they don't just analyze passes, they'll analyze these passes that actually get you up the field, a sequence of passes that are made together. So basically, last season we would average 10 pass sequences in a game. We're now at 7.4. We've lost a quarter of our pass sequences. Now, that's not actually necessarily progression up the pitch. We're also in possession of the ball for shorter periods of time, which I know would be bear out. So basically, and a pass sequence, our average is, if we get the ball and we pass it around, last season it would basically be 9.2 seconds before we lost it. Now it's 8.2 seconds. We're keeping the ball for a second less, basically getting dispossessed far, far earlier. And also what's lessened on that, and I've got some more here as well, but I'll go into those later, is basically less of our passing, less of our attacks are turning into shots. This is quite damning stuff, Gio.
Yeah, it's everything really. It's sort of like the build-up's got worse, what you're doing with the ball's got worse, the shooting's got worse. Pretty much in possession, we've got worse all over the pitch, really. It's not like there's one area that's really fell off a cliff. Okay, rectify that and you should be okay again. It's, oh, no. everything is going badly. Because, like I said, the article goes on to cover other elements of what you do with the ball, which you might cover. And, those stats that you've read out is okay as long as you're doing something else to justify it. And you're sort of reading the article waiting for the justification.
Yeah, I was.
It doesn't really come.
No. No, that's what I was waiting. The but at the end. But what is good is the expected goals are up and the defense is better. No, there was nothing. There was no recovery, was there?
No, it was like, okay, that's not the end of the world as long as you're doing this. But they're not doing this either.
No, there was the comparison in the article. It was a lot of comparisons between Glenn Roeder's team, which obviously got relegated, and I think they were making a comparison because it was the whole too good to go down, and there was a bit of that. I find it. I mean, some of the stats, past sequences that result in a shot have dropped from 1.81 to 1.27. Now, I can't even suggest I know precisely what that means. All right, but I can count a little bit. And I do know a drop from 1.81 to 1.27 is a lot. And I do know that pass sequences into a shot is probably to do with attacking. And if your attacking is dropping by that much of a percentage, then it ain't good. And here's my issue with a lot of this. David Moyes is sometimes at pains to talk about players' numbers, their numbers, their statistics. And this goes into what we call the confirmation bias. Sometimes you might just look for the numbers that suit your argument. So there might be, and Thomas Souček, and I'm sorry to pick him out, but this is the article. The article picked him out. Thomas Souček's progressive passes. I take you obviously, well, you must have twigged this bit when you saw it. They're a quarter worse. They're a quarter worse than they were, without giving you the exact stats. And then when you start to factor that into how the rest of the team's performing, actually his individual passings probably correlate with a lot of the stuff. Now, I am not putting the blame for West Ham's slump this season at Thomas Souček's. I'm really not. Okay, this is the manager's job, and I'm sure if other players were doing other things, it wouldn't just be Thomas Souček. But I picked Thomas Souček because he just gets selected time and time and time again. You saw it a bit on Paqueta, Gio?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's a little bit confirmation bias, which suggests that we probably haven't utilised him correctly, but also he's not really been good enough either. And the article sort of hinted that when we do play him in the right place, the right time, he does influence the game. That's probably one part of the article I felt I disagreed with a little bit. I thought this is where I think what you call the eye test, what you see, I think actually supersedes statistics. I think actually, because they said against Nottingham Forest, we played like a 4-2-3-1. I actually disagreed with that. So I thought when I read, I said, I don't think we did. I thought it was more of a 4-3-3, and Paqueta was dropping back just as much as he was going forward, kind of thing. And he was in the same position as in the next game against Brighton, but I felt the article just ignored that completely because his stats against Forest were good, but against Brighton they were shocking. So I was like, oh, we'll just ignore that game. So the Paqueta bit was what I expected, but at the same time, I sort of ruled that one out a little bit because I just thought it wasn't necessarily true compared to what I had seen. And then this is the problem. There's good things when a neutral looks at your club. There's some advantages, which is they're not biased, etc. But there's also disadvantages, which is they haven't really seen West Ham play enough. And I think this is a problem with a statistical outlook. It's very cold and very straightforward. Football is not either of those things.
No, it's not. And just for those of you wondering, well, what is the Paqueta stuff? There was talk about his performance with Nottingham Forest, but before that, it was giving his stats this season, which are so far down on his stats for Olympique Lyonnais. And not just in terms of goal output and assists, and actually what he's doing on the pitch in terms of his completed progressive passes was a big one. And actually, when you start looking at the individuals like Souček, like Paqueta, it basically tallies up when you look at the team who are well down on progressive passes. Also mentioned Schumacher, and by and large, these stats are not overly promising. It wasn't all doom and gloom. I did say that there were a couple of things. Our expected goals against Aston Villa were better, but the the article was very much Opta saying David Moyes is going to need to find something here. Tactically, he needs to find something. It also suggested that the players, particularly in midfield, were possibly apathetic to it. And it did suggest that maybe what we're seeing here is not that David Moyes' tactics are totally different from last season. Actually, his tactics are the same. So he didn't do that thing that he said he was going to do, which is change the style of play. He didn't do it. You know this. You think, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I know you're saying that at your whatever, at your phone or your laptop now. I haven't told you anything you don't know. However, what the article says is the players just don't appear to be motivated enough to carry that out. Now, that's not something that is basically the assumption, the supposition of the person writing the article. What you can't do is find a statistic for the players' attitude.
It was also off the back of Jacob Steinberg's article, which said the players were a little bit fed up with the tactics and stuff, because it mentions that article at the very start of this.
It does.
Then just goes into this spiel about statistics, and at the very end, it tries to give a little bit of a summary, and it sort of alludes back to the very start of the article, which was the players are just a little bit fed up. And I think they were basically trying to say from their experience, when you have this much numerical drop-offs, that's bad for a club. That spells the players are just giving up a little bit when you've got all these red lights across the board, kind of thing. They were saying from their experience at Opta that usually signifies the end, if you like. But they did try to throw a bit of positivity in at the end, like you said, and said that statistically they believe West Ham are more than likely to stay up at this point. And you said about Scamacca, he's the only player outperforming his expected goals, whereas last season we had a few of them, with Jared Bourne in particular. But this season, only Scamacca's actually scoring more than he's expected to, given the chances he's getting, which is interesting. I probably wouldn't have predicted that, actually.
No. I had to read it again, actually.
I found it quite reassuring, because I thought, okay, well, this is good. This reassures me that we do have a top striker here this season, and it just reassures me that actually, if you do get him the service, he will score your goals. I think the problem is the service rather than him. And there is, of course, a double-edged sword here, which is, well, Scamacca's not really, in some games, his attitude's not really been great, and he's not been making the runs he should do. So if he's not getting the ball because of his lack of effort, then he's not going to be getting the opportunities. So it works in tangent. Both things need to happen. But there was positives. It was just a very damning article for West Ham's season so far, statistically.
There you go. We didn't make it up, by the way, so don't shoot the messenger. I've never written down so many numbers in all my life. Mind you, I might see if my luck's better than West Ham's luck. I might use those numbers. They might be my lottery numbers for the old Euro Millions this week. Anyway, Gio, thank you very much. Please do keep an eye on both channels, because what we're doing is, well, we needed your lovely suggestions there. And yeah, just thank you very much, David Starr, for suggesting that. We've got more suggestions coming up. Keep your eye on both channels. Like, subscribe, all that funny stuff. We'll catch up with you over on the other channel.